this move by the Trump administration to make nice with the Russians, it's hard to see that as anything other than a bizarre attempt to allow for spheres of influence, not just with regard to Russia, but also, as we'll discuss momentarily, with China. For Ukraine, the question is why you would sign a deal when the United States is cutting support to Ukraine in the middle of a war now. Why would Ukraine believe that if Russia attacks again, the United States will rush back in with all of its resources? Apparently, according to Axios, Ukraine has now given the Trump administration its point-by-point response to the latest draft of the U.S. peace plan. Apparently, Zelensky's national security advisor and chief negotiator, Rustem Umerov, sent the Ukrainian response to Jared Kushner, President Trump's advisor and son-in-law. A Ukrainian official said the response includes comments and proposed amendments to make the whole thing doable. So is there a middle ground here? Here's my problem. Have we heard any response from the Russians whatsoever on what they are willing to do? Have they moved one iota? Have they moved 1 inch since the beginning of the war in terms of their demands? Or at least since the latest iteration of demands, which mostly happened about 3 years ago? The answer seems to be no. Meanwhile, what exactly are we doing with China? Now, it may very well be that right now we have some military problems in the Far East that make China the favorite in a local or regional war in that arena. According to the UK Telegraph, China would defeat the U.S. military in a war over Taiwan, according to a top-secret U.S. government assessment. U.S. reliance on costly, sophisticated weapons leaves it exposed to China's ability to mass-produce cheaper systems in overwhelming numbers, according to a highly classified Overmatch brief. A national security official under President Biden who reviewed the document is said to have turned pale on realizing Beijing had redundancy and after redundancy for every trick we had up our sleeve. So, in the brief, which examines what would happen if the U.S. went to war with China over Taiwan, for example, the USS Gerald R. Ford would be sent to that arena where it would likely be destroyed. Again, that's because China is engaged in drone warfare. Also, they have ship-destroying YJ-17 missiles that travel at 8 times the speed of sound. And yet the United States continues to play a bizarre game with its defense industries where we fight yesterday's war. Apparently, the Pentagon is planning to build 9 additional Ford-class aircraft carriers, but it hasn't deployed a single hypersonic missile as of yet. According to Eric Gomez, a research fellow at the Taiwan Security Monitor, he said he did his own war game between the United States and China over Taiwan. He said even if the U.S. would win, the U.S. would suffer heavy losses, including a lot of ships. A lot of F-35s and other tactical aircraft in the theater are degraded pretty rapidly as well. He said, I think the high cost of it was really sobering when we did the after-action summaries. We were like, okay, you guys lost 100 plus 5th-generation aircraft, multiple destroyers, a couple of submarines, a couple of carriers. So, is our advantage in that arena real enough for us to take on China? Again, this is why rebuilding the military is absolutely necessary, and getting creative about how exactly we do that would be absolutely necessary as well. It's also why it would be worthwhile to listen to Sham Sankar, who's been a guest on our program, the CTO at Palantir, who's been talking for a while about modernizing our military procurement strategy and fighting future wars, not the wars of the past. Well, if we are going to face down China, is it a good idea for the president to let NVIDIA sell its H200 chip to China? According to the Wall Street Journal editorial board, President Trump's move to ease export controls on computer chips illustrates his confusing China policy to the extent he has one. In the first term, he changed America's China debate as a trade and security hawk. 8 years later, he's sounding like the post-Cold War globalist he denounces, who thought the lure of commerce would make the world safer. According to the journal, one reason is that Beijing's semiconductor industrial policy has resulted in colossal waste and mismanagement. Huawei has struggled designing high-end and high-powered chips needed to train those advanced AI models, and this has frustrated Beijing, which presumably is why China keeps trying to smuggle NVIDIA H200 chips into the country. Now President Trump wants to allow China to just buy those H200s without any strings attached. So is that a smart move? The 25% tax payments that NVIDIA will pay to the Treasury Department, that is not enough to pay for the possibility of a competitive China in the AI sphere. And it's hard to read that as anything other than a sort of tacit recognition of Chinese power in the Far East or Russian power in Eastern Europe, none of which is going to redound to the benefit of the world. The United States as the world's global hegemon, you're going to miss it when it's gone. That doesn't mean that we ought to police every single thing happening on planet Earth. It does mean that we do have to push our opponents geopolitically off the ball. Well, I will say that at least the House seems to be moving towards something useful. The House on Wednesday apparently approved a $900 billion defense policy bill that gives U.S. troops a raise and codifies a lot of President Trump's national security agenda. It seeks to curb his pullback from Europe and mandate more Pentagon consultation with Congress. The bill goes to the Senate. It will probably pass there as well. So, again, we actually do need a military rebuild. That means contracting to do more sophisticated things, newer things, robotics, AI, all the rest. We can't just build yesterday's aircraft carriers anymore and hope to defeat our enemies. We'll get to more on this in a moment. First, you know that creepy feeling you get sometimes like you're being watched while you're browsing online? Here's the thing. You are. Every time you hop on the internet, your service provider can see literally everything you do. And get this. In the US, they can legally sell your entire browsing history. Yeah, even that incognito browsing isn't so private after all. Who would have thunk? That's why I started using ExpressVPN. It's a brilliant app that encrypts everything I do online and routes it through secure servers. Since I started using it, my internet provider can't see any of my browsing history, which means they've got nothing to sell because they don't really have anything on me. I use ExpressVPN all the time. I'm using it when I go to foreign countries. I'm using it when I'm in the airport. I'm using it when I'm at a hotel. Here's what I really love about ExpressVPN. It also hides my IP address, so those annoying data brokers can't build a profile about me to sell to advertisers. Plus, it's incredibly user-friendly. You don't have to be a tech wizard to use it. They've made it so simple, even your kids could figure it out. All you have to do is tap one button and get protected. They've got apps for all your devices, and it's rated #1 by CNET, The Verge, and other major tech reviewers. Find out how you can get up to 4 extra months by scanning that QR code on screen, clicking the link in the description box below, or by heading on over to expressvpn.com/Ben Shapiro Show. Again, that's expressvpn.com/Ben Shapiro Show to get started. And the reality is, as much as President Trump likes to dunk on the Europeans, and hell, I enjoy a good windmill jam on the Europeans from time to time, the notion that we somehow hold more in common with Vladimir Putin than we do with the Europeans, broadly speaking, is nonsense. It is not true. We hold virtually nothing in common with Vladimir Putin. Contrary to popular expectation and opinion, Russia is not, in fact, a state that is wildly pro-religion. Russia is not, in fact, a state that agrees with us on foreign policy perspectives. It is not a country that seeks its own sphere of influence without any reference to the United States. It actually believes it ought to be not just a regional power, but a global power in opposition to the United States. Which is why a brand new plan apparently unveiled by the Wall Street Journal with regard to Ukraine is somewhat disturbing. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Trump administration in recent weeks has handed its European counterparts a series of documents, each a single page, laying out its vision for the reconstruction of Ukraine and the return of Russia to the global economy. The proposals have sparked an intense battle at the negotiating table between America and its traditional allies in Europe. The outcome stands to profoundly alter the economic map of the continent. The U.S. blueprint has been spelled out apparently in appendices to current peace proposals. They're not public, but they have been described to the Wall Street Journal. Those documents detail plans for U.S. financial firms and other businesses to tap roughly $200 billion of frozen Russian assets for projects in Ukraine, including a massive new data center to be powered by a nuclear plant currently occupied by Russian troops. Another appendix, however, offers America's broad strokes vision for bringing Russia's economy in from the cold, with the U.S. investing in strategic sectors from rare earth extraction to drilling for oil in the Arctic and helping to restore Russian energy flows to Western Europe and the rest of the world. Which, again, is pretty astonishing. And basically, it is saying, okay, we'll take a little bit of your money to pay for some projects and rebuilding in Ukraine, and maybe that sweetens the deal for Ukraine. But we'll then reopen the world economy to Russia. Well, if that happens and Russia has a vast influx of cash, you think they're going to sit still on Ukraine for very long? The minute that they sense vulnerability, they will move. Apparently, in a call Wednesday, President Trump discussed the peace process with French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The rumor is, very strong rumor, that the Trump administration has basically told the Ukrainians they need to sign on the dotted line by Christmas or U.S. support will go away, which of course would be incredibly self-defeating. Russia would love for U.S. support to go away. And by the way, the Europeans are beginning to act. The European Parliament and member state governments, according to the Journal, finalized a legislative agreement to phase out all Russian pipeline gas within 2 years.